Good afternoon, everybody. My name is John Stenhouse. I'm the Business Support Manager at the University of Essex, leading on the Space to Grow Angels at Essex programs. And we're part of the University Enterprise Zone series of investment readiness events, where we discuss and help you understand how to become investment ready, both for the benefit of investors and entrepreneurs alike. So we welcome you on board. Now, I have with me today Simon Atack from Innovate UK Edge, and I'll explain more about that later. And I also have with me Josh Clark, who is managing all the technical aspects of today and hoping that he can keep us all in line. So I would now like to talk about Simon. I've known Simon for many, many years, and if he doesn't know the answer, then he'll probably find someone who can. He is the lead professional innovation growth advisor at the Innovate UK Edge, and he's going to talk to you today about their services, which are entirely free. So please don't feel obliged to get your checkbooks or your credit card out for this session. And he's going to talk about the Innovation Project Canvas, which is something that we actually recommend entrepreneurs actually at least look at, if not complete, because in getting your pitch decks ready, in getting yourself investment ready, it's an ideal tool for that purpose. But I will now hand over to Simon and let Simon do his own sales pitch. So Simon, please take care of the screen.
Thanks very much, John. Thank you for the kind introduction. So the Innovation Project Canvas, this is an extremely useful tool if you're looking to put together an overview of your business and you're going for investment funding. So whether that's grant funding, such as the grant funding that we provide through Innovate UK, whether it's loan funding, or whether you're looking for investment funding from angel investors or venture capitalists. What this does is it provides a very useful framework for pulling together all of the elements and information that you'll need to make a comprehensive bid to put into Access Finance. So what I'll do is take you through each of the elements of the Innovation Project Canvas, and we can consider what sort of things need to be looked at within those areas and how overall this can be of use. So the first thing with the Innovation Canvas that you see is there's two elements to it. So on the left-hand side, you've got about the innovation internally with the business. So things such as the unique features, the technical feasibility of the innovation, the production process, IPR, project plan, and risks that are involved in your new product or service innovation. On the other side of the canvas, you've got an overview of the commercialization elements of your business model or your proposition, which covers all sorts of things like your market potential, who your customer segments are, what your product or service value proposition is, what the channels to market are, who your competitors are, customer relationships, the team, and then at the bottom, covering the costs involved in your project and also the revenue streams. So when looking at the canvas, you can actually approach it in any way that you'd like to start with it and start off with any particular boxes that you wish to fill. However, generally, when I'm tending to be working through it with clients, we start looking off at the innovation first and working our way through a process, which I'll take you through now. So the first thing we need to consider once you've got this great new fantastic idea that you'd like to take to market is what are the unique features that you have, and what is the innovation project likely to produce? So what are you thinking about? Is it a new product that you're developing? Is it a new service? Are there new processes involved? Are there new materials, methods, applications? And why do you believe that your project will produce something highly innovative? And that's one of the key elements. If you're going to be submitting an application for a competitive bid or access to finance, you really need to be able to justify what is really unique and different about your new product or service solution. And so really clarifying that in this section is really important. So then next, we'd look at technical feasibility. And this is why you believe and can confirm that it's actually technically feasible to engage on this project and produce the idea as a product or a service or a change of process, a material method or an application. And some of the key questions that you need to ask yourself is, why is it technically feasible to produce the product or service? Are there any particular functional requirements or design features that the market demands of your idea? And can these actually be achieved? Do you have the technical capability actually required to complete the development of your idea into a commercially viable product, service, or process? And it's whether you have that technical ability in-house or whether you're looking for other partners externally to be able to develop that capability that you need to bring your product or service to commercialization. Are there any industry standards or technical parameters which you need to work within? So are there regulations that you need to adhere to, specific certifications that you need to get as part of your development process? Have you researched any other methods or solutions to the problem in terms of technical research and also non-technical? And does the idea comply with all of the requirements set by law and regulations? On the next section of the innovation project canvas, we then look at the production process. And this is looking at the process map of how everything fits together. And you need to establish clearly whether it's possible to scale up the production process to the levels needed to provide a growth trajectory for your business. So can you actually map out clearly the full production process for the investors or the funders and prove that it's commercially viable to produce the idea on a large scale? For example, you may have had an idea, you may have developed a 3D printed prototype, and that works fantastically. However, with actual injection molding manufacturing or different types of manufacturing, you may find that what you've produced as a prototype, which works as a prototype, isn't scalable effectively when you take it to the mass market. So it's very important considerations in terms of how you look at this and how you can evidence that that real scalability is there. Then another key aspect of developing a new product or service is around your intellectual property rights. And this is incredibly important as this can make up a large value of the company as it grows and scales. And so you really need to understand intellectual property, things like your patents, copyright, trademarks, design rights, and see which apply to your product or service and how you can best protect the innovation that you've got within all of the target markets that you're looking to go to, whether it's sectoral or geographic. And in terms of if your model is looking at licensing IP, this is especially important. And so you need to consider what's involved in the process of licensing that IP to third parties in terms of the contracts and the agreements and the processes for making sure that the royalties that you're looking for are paid appropriately and you can account for them effectively. Also in these, you need to look at non-disclosure agreements, confidentiality agreements, and whether these have been signed and really consider how you're letting people know about your idea in the right way and in the right process so that you don't invalidate patent applications and have challenges with your IP further on. So this is an extremely important area to actually look at and consider. Following on from that, within the innovation project canvas, we then need to see what the project plan is. And often we use a Gantt chart to help put the framework to that together when you're looking at submissions for funding. So it's clearly easy to see where everything sits in terms of your project plan, what the timescales are, what the work packages are, and how the deliverables come out and when. So you need to ask yourself, what is your research and development strategy? What are the major milestones and the key activities needed to complete the project on time? Because often with funding applications for grants, you would put specific time frames as to when you will be starting a project and when you'll be completing a project, and you need to evidence how that is actually going to be delivered effectively. You have to ask yourself whether the project is actually broken down into well-defined work packages, because again, this could be extremely important if you're doing a drawdown of funds based on the work packages to help the business with its cash flow. So again, that needs to be considered. What your time frame is for getting the innovation to market, and what contingencies are in place to ensure the project progresses on time. Following on from this, as a part of the whole project that you're looking at engaging on, there are lots of different risks that can impact a project. And so having a really detailed and comprehensive assessment of the risks associated with all aspects of the innovation project are extremely important to the funders who are looking to provide you with your investment. The several key risk areas are things such as intellectual property competition, customer adoption and diffusion, technical or technological risks that may be inherent in the project, costs and revenue streams and how accurate those may be and what they may be impacted by, and the skills and experience of the team involved in bringing the project forward and taking the product or service to market. So again, this is another area where you really need to delve into the depth and breadth of the detail. So having looked at what we've got as an idea and the fact that it's technically feasible, it's got a clear production process that works for scalability, there's inherent intellectual property in it, and we know and understand that intellectual property, and we've got it appropriately protected. We've got a clear project plan in place as to how we're going to get from A to B, and we understand all of the inherent risks that are involved in the project, and we've got mitigation solutions in place to cover that. We've then got considerations around the commercialization side, where we look at initially the top level market potential. So what are the trends or the challenges that are driving the innovation that you're bringing to market? Is this trend or challenge, is it going to create a new market, or is it going to reshape an existing market? Is it something that can provide you with a longer term sustainable business opportunity? And with this, you really need to consider the big macro environmental factors. So what are the social changes, technological changes, things going on in the economy, environmental changes, political changes, legal and ethical changes that are drivers that are most influential in creating the opportunity? And also, what are the potential risks that are inherent with some of those changes going on as well that you can feed into your risk register? So some of the questions that you need to consider are, what is the estimated value of the accessible market? What's the estimated growth of the accessible market? What estimated market share you might reasonably expect to win over the next 3 to 5 years? What are the particular characteristics of the markets that you're going to approach? And how can you create a defensible position within the target markets? Now, often with funding applications, figures for the market potential are put in as the total available market in the world. So if I have a mobile phone and the total market for mobile phones around the world is 60 billion, then often we see people putting that in as their market potential. But what you've really got to understand is the TAM-SAM-SOM model, which is that the total available market is never going to be something that you're going to fully address as normal businesses. So you've also got to consider the serviceable addressable market, which is what you can address over time with your resources and the plans of the business moving forward. And what is the serviceable obtainable market? So this is what is the market that you can obtain realistically, say within the next 12 months. And it's very important. And rather than going top down, which the TAM is, you're looking at bottom up. So how many units can I actually produce at what price and sell over that period, which will then give me an idea of realistic value of that serviceable obtainable market. And for investors, this is what they really want to know is what's the realistic market potential that you've got, rather than sort of a lot of big figures that are not going to be achievable. So in terms of the overall, we've then just had a look at the overall market potential for what your new product or service can address. The next thing we need to consider after that is drilling down further and looking at who the particular customer segments are. So you can prove that you really identify and understand your customers. And so key questions that you need to ask are, who exactly are your customers? Who will use your innovation? Users may be different to customers as well, which you need to consider. How are they going to use it? What are the nature of different target customer segments that you're dealing with, and how you're going to address those? Have you defined customers' user profiles by both characteristics and also by buying behaviors? And have you visited potential customers or engaged with them to align your innovation to their business problems and challenges? And this is a very important area as well for investors, is that you have a clear understanding of your target customer segments, rather than we've got something great and we can sell it to everybody in the world. You need to really drill down into the specific customer segments that you're engaging with, so that you can also develop your product or service that you're having to better engage with each of those customer segments and give you the competitive edge against your competitors. So having broken it down and gone from the overall big market potential, drill down into your customer segments, you want to then drill further. And for each of the customer segments, you're then considering the value proposition. So this is looking at why those particular customer segments would really find value in the product or service that you're developing and selling to them. And so you need to explain clearly why customers would prioritize your product or service or process or materials over those of your competitors. Key questions you need to ask are, which customer and or user problem will your innovation help to solve? What will it take for your customers or users to experience the benefits of your innovation? How does your business model differ to those used by your competitors? And how does it benefit your customers more than the competition? So for example, what new characteristics as well does your innovation offer? Is it more accessible? Is it something that's complementary? Does it provide more convenience? Does it create cost reductions, customization? Is it more easy to use? Does it create better efficiencies? So you really need to drill down into where the value proposition is. And the framework of the value proposition canvas is an extremely useful tool for doing this, because it really helps you look at the customer from their point of view and from the jobs that they're trying to get done. So you always start the value proposition canvas looking at it from the right-hand side, from the customer jobs, and trying to understand all of the tasks that they do when they're utilizing a product or service like yours. You need to understand the pains that they experience when trying to do those jobs. You need to understand things that they consider as value add, as gains in terms of doing those jobs. And then from that, this is an extremely useful tool in that, first of all, it can inform your products and service new product development, because you can clearly see what a customer would view as a pain and what they would view as a gain, and you can build that into your product and service. And in terms of highlighting those, it also helps your marketing communications to the customer as well, because you would then be able to list and say, with this framework, this is my product or service, which has these gain creators and pain relievers, so the features of your product or service, that create these benefits, which are the gains and pains being solved for you, the customer, when you're trying to do this job. So in terms of clarifying your marketing message and making it more effective to each customer segment that you're engaging with, this is an extremely powerful tool, because it means that you're going to design and build a product that your customers really want. And when you're communicating the message about that product or service, you are putting in your communications messaging that helps the customer understand things that your product or service does, where there's real value to them. So you're not promoting things about your product to a customer segment that has no value to that customer segment. So out of all the tools that are there, this is a very, very important and valuable tool to have a look at when you're looking at developing a new product or service and selling it to markets. Okay, and then in terms of where we are now, so we've had a look at the overall big picture market potential. You've then drilled down into your customer segments. And then from there, for your customer segments, you've looked at the value proposition as to what you have as your product or service that provides value to each of those individual customer segments. And the value proposition for each segment may well be different. You then have to consider the channels. So how are you going to get the product or service that you're providing to the marketplace? And you have to clearly identify the most effective channels to distribute this and to inform others of your innovation. And putting this down clearly, again, helps provide a comprehensive overview of your product or service innovation and how you've come from creating it all the way through each stage to take it to commercialization. And the strategy for getting the innovation into the marketplace and exploiting its potential is incredibly important for investors, because at the end of the day, what they want to see, whether they're grant funders, they want to see return on investment in terms of impacts. So sales turnover increased for a business, greater resiliency, increase in full-time employees, impacts on supply chain, to other investors who are maybe looking at greater financial returns. And so this element of looking at your strategy for getting the innovation into the marketplace and exploiting its potential is extremely important. Okay, so another thing that we need to consider, as well as what we're doing, is what the competition are doing. So we need to be able to identify clearly and in detail who the competitors are or will potentially be. So we need to show who is operating in the market space, which of the major players in the market could be considered as direct, indirect, or replacement competitors. What competing products or solutions are being developed or are already in the market? And what is the commercial state of the art available today in this sector? And where does your innovation sit in relation to that? So again, having a good knowledge of what your competitors are doing and who they are allows you to exploit the potential gaps that exist in the marketplace. And with putting a submission in, having a good overview of that will make the funders or the investors feel much more confident in the proposition that you've put forward. Okay, so with the project, the next thing to consider is customer relations. And this is identifying how you will help people find out about your innovation. So how are you planning to promote your innovation? How are you planning to disseminate the results of your project if it's a research project? How are you going to maximize impact using channels such as press releases, conferences, advertising, scientific publications, workshops, and newsletters? How are you going to shout about this great new innovation that you've got? And how will your activities pave the way for future market entry, perhaps for further new product development? And are there any conditions that you have to be aware of for dissemination of results by partners? So if you've had grant funding previously, or you're tied into certain relationships with backers, there may be restrictions on what you can say and what you can't say, how you can say it, and when you can say it. So again, you need to be aware of the contracts that you've engaged in and whether that will impact your communication strategy. Right, so in terms of looking at things then as a recap, so we've covered our market potential, our customer segments, our value proposition, we've looked at our channels, we've looked at competitors in detail, we've looked at how we're going to disseminate and communicate the great information about our innovation. And then another area of critical importance to investors is looking at what the cost structures are. So how well you've detailed the estimated total cost of the project, what the amount of level of internal or external funding you need for the project, what financial investment has been made so far, whether you have a breakdown of costs associated with the project, and have you estimated the relationship of the cost by unit price to that of the selling price for your dominant customer segment. If you're seeking external investment, how are you likely to acquire any of the match funding that you need, and can you evidence this? How much follow-on financing may be needed after the project to actually bring your innovation to commercialization? And how are you likely to finance the remainder of the project yourself? And is this a robust plan that you've got in terms of the financing? Following understanding your cost structure and detailing that, you've also got to put together where the money's going to come in from. So it's identifying a selection of your potential revenue streams and assessing their long-term viability. So how are you going to make money from your innovation? Is it going to be direct sales? Is it going to be sales through a distributor? Is it going to be a licensing model? Have you set a selling price for your new product or service or process? And do you know how this compares with your main competitors? So what's your pricing model? Is it based on cost plus pricing? Is it based on consumer-led pricing, competitive? Are you a premium price, penetration pricing, skimming, economy pricing, or even are you trialing a freemium approach? Have you calculated the return on investment your business might make, and what forms of revenue streams we'll be using? So are there digital revenue streams, asset sales, commissions, dynamic pricing, fixed prices, e-commerce, etc.? So all of these things you need to really have nailed down within the overall applications that you're putting into for these access to finance submissions. And so the detail really does need to be there. And then finally, the other most important thing for investors and also for grant funders is who's involved in the team. So you have to describe your plan for acquiring the skills and knowledge your business will need to deliver the project. You need to clarify what experience is there in key business areas among the employees of your company, in critical areas such as finance and operations, marketing and sales, product and service development. Are there senior people within your business who have experience of bringing a major innovation successfully to market previously? Is there sufficient capacity in the business to keep the project moving to its conclusion within the agreed timescale for the project? Which key external partners will you need to work with to successfully execute the project? And what changes, if any, will you need to make to your business processes or systems to accommodate this innovation project that you're working on? And what prior experience within the organization is there of IP, of things like patenting, copywriting, design rights that we talked about before? So all of these things are to detail who we have in the team and what their skills are and how they contribute to the project, and also identifying where the gaps are within that team and how you're proposing to address those gaps to make sure that the project is a success. So overall, putting the innovation project into Canvas, once you've completed all of those different elements of the canvas, you then need to look at it in the context of the business model environment and really consider the whole project against what's going on in the macro environment, the steeple that we talked about earlier, what the key trend drivers are that are out there, what the market forces are that are impacting or in a positive or risk way in terms of the project that you have, what competitive forces are out there, and what are the strongest industry forces. So again, it's not considering your project in isolation, but actually looking at it from the whole macro environmental point of view as well. And so in terms of the innovation project canvas and looking at access to finance and going for grant funding bids or investment finance, some top tips that I would consider from a lot of the applications that we see and we've helped support is important things are to really read and understand the requirements of the grant that you're going for or the investors that you're looking to get investment from. You need to understand their timelines. You need to understand how they're going to be scoring the applications. You need to understand the values that they have so that within all of this, you can make sure that every single element that they're looking to tick off, that you've got covered. Researching the funder is really important to see where their values sit and what things would float their boat in terms of the context of the information that you provide to them. And then once you've pulled together all of your project proposal, it's a good idea then to strip back and refine it before submission and just make sure that everything is covered off. And utilizing the Innovation Project Canvas tool is a useful framework for doing that. Other things that are important are don't assume. Evidence is key. So in terms of making any claims within your application, the devil is in the detail, and credibility and strength of the delivery plan is key. So if you're going to say it will save lives, you need to try and specify how many lives as an estimate it will save. If it's going to increase your turnover, you need to be able to try and specify and quantify by how much it is likely to increase your turnover. You need to remove the rose-tinted glasses and be realistic about the proposal in terms of the risks and the opportunities and the size of the market that you're looking at. So again, it's all about that detailed analysis. You need to answer the questions asked, so make sure you go through all of those and answer exactly what they're asking. We have some where there's questions around technology readiness level developments, which sometimes people miss those and don't get the evolution that the business needs to show in the application moving through the technology readiness levels. And there's other areas, so it's really important to ask the questions that answer the questions that are being asked. You need to be concise and eliminate jargon. So you may know all of the jargon terms specifically for your industry, but you may get an assessor who is looking at that, who comes from a different industry, and he doesn't understand those jargon terms. So it's really important to, once you've done the whole application, is let somebody else who isn't tied to your industry read it to see if it makes sense to them. You need to be right on the money as terms of the return on investment. So with your plans for the investment, is the investment right for the business in terms of the funding levels and the ROI? Is it right for the project? And is it right for the funder? There's no point going for a £5 million grant investment out of a £20 million pot that an organization is trying to split between 100 businesses. So you need to really be aware of what the funder is looking at in terms of the financial distribution and how it sits in terms of your claims with the project and what you're looking to do with your business. You need to understand what's in it for them, for the funders, and understand and showcase within your narrative what they're looking for in terms of the impact. So as I mentioned previously, if you're getting a grant funding investment, the investors will be wanting to see how is that grant funding going to help increase your speed to market? How is it going to increase the turnover of your business? How is it going to make your business more resilient? How is it going to increase the number of full-time employees in the business? How is it going to help the supply chain? How is it going to have an environmental impact? So it's really understanding what they're looking for. So again, you can make sure that your narrative is really robust with having the right information for the funders. You need to regularly and clearly reinforce your USPs and the wow factors with all things, whether it's grant funding or investor funding. It is a competition, and you're competing for that investment in your business. And so you need to make sure that your innovation really stands out and your business plan and your business model really stands out. So you've really got to highlight that USP and wow factor that you've got there, and do that regularly within the application. Other things, you need to set aside enough time and complete and submit early. So again, if you've got a deadline of 12 o'clock on a day, it's better to try and get it done a few weeks before that, so you can get some external reviewing done rather than 11 o'clock on the day trying to go for the submission and hoping that people can review it for you before it goes in. So it's really important to try and set aside that time so that you can go back and do that stripping back, looking at it and refining that we discussed earlier. And then in terms of external reviewers and resources, there are lots of resources that you've got out there as an SME to help you with gaining investment and gaining grant funding. So it's make use of those resources and get other specialists to have a look over the applications that you're putting in, because that will help craft them and give you a better chance of obtaining the finance. So it's definitely important to make use of that. So those are my top tips in terms of utilizing the innovation project canvas and going for the grant funding. So that basically covers off the innovation project canvas and what it looks like as a framework and what you need to cover in each of those individual elements and the depth and breadth of the detail that you need to go into in terms of preparing a grant funding or an investment application. As I said, there's a lot of resources out there that you can use to help develop the strategy within the business. And so for your grant funding or your investment funding, make use of those. There's the Canvas models we've discussed. There's information that's out there about the funding providers or investors that you're looking at. So really look into those. There's the local growth hubs. We've got the knowledge transfer network, which can provide a lot of useful information. You've got specialist catapults, the Department for International Trade, the Chambers of Commerce, industry bodies, libraries, online resources. And you've also got us at Innovate UK Edge, who are here to help businesses who've got new products and new innovations with taking those forward. So there's an awful lot of support out there, and it's really, really useful to get plugged into it, because you've got quite a big helping hand. And so in terms of Innovate UK Edge, what we do is we are the front end of Innovate UK, helping SMEs, and we cover the east of England. So that's the 6 counties of Cambridgeshire, Bedfordshire, Hertfordshire, Suffolk, Norfolk, and Essex. And we provide bespoke support to businesses who have come up with an innovative product or service that they are looking to grow, scale, and internationalize. And in terms of the processes, if you get in touch with us, we'll have a meeting with you, discuss what your plans are and where your gaps and challenges are, and then look at the support that we can provide to help you address those gaps and connect with the right sort of partners and connections that you need to help you grow. And so for any further information that you'd like on Innovate UK Edge or the Innovation Project Canvas, please feel free to contact me, and my address information is on the slides, or connect with me on LinkedIn, and happy to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Simon. Very smoothly done. I like it. I think we have got some more polls to ask, but before we get into that, we've got some questions that would like to be answered, and I hope you're ready for this, because we are really going to go to town here. Kira Donovan has actually submitted 2 questions. We'll take one at a time, though.
Okay.
So, if you plan on an exit, i.e. an acquisition by a key player in the market, in other words, sell to the competition, before your product gets to market, how do you show SOM?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's looking at, if you're planning on an exit before it gets to market, well, in those cases, you would need to, I mean, in terms of the development, you must have an idea of what your product is, how much it's likely to cost, how many you could sell, and so you should be able to put some level of SOM in. It may not be exactly right, but at least you should be able to do some estimates. You should have an idea of what the total available market is, what the serviceable addressable market is, what the SOM would be, because if you're going to sell on to a buyer in an exit, they're going to want to know where the value sits as well. So they're going to want to understand that. I mean, you may be in the same industry and they may have those figures, but they're going to want to see your knowledge. And the more knowledgeable you are around the figures like that, the better negotiating position you're in when you're looking at that buyout. So it's trying to craft it from the bottom up, looking at what the demand is. I hope that helps.
Yeah, I think you I think you must appreciate that if it's at that really early stage, it is speculative, and it's only worth what someone's prepared to pay for it in many ways. And I think that's where you go through. And that leads on to her next question. Can you talk about how to present costs and revenue for an R&D clinical trial stage biotech startup that does not have any products on the market yet? Well, one could argue, let's talk COVID. I mean, COVID vaccinations, it wasn't on the market yet, but how much was actually invested into the manufacturing and the development stage? If you don't know how much the manufacturing costs are going to be, then you can't predict product costs. You can't actually expect that that the cost of goods are low. They might appear to be low, but you don't know, because you don't know what production barriers there will be. So it's an interesting question, but the question basically is, how can you price something like that? Do you value it on the value of the patents instead of being dictated by the high manufacturing costs? Where do you start? And I'll be honest with you, it's chicken and egg. It really is. Where do you start with something like that? It is a difficult situation, and I think My answer to this particular question is you have to take professional advice from experts who have valued that kind of biotech startup in that field. And there's lots of them about there because the UK's got lots of biotech startups. So I feel that's what I don't know what your feeling on this is, Simon.
Yeah, I mean, what you can do, I mean, one of the things that we look at is benchmarking. So if you were looking at, as John said, trying to compare yourself with companies that may have been in a similar position and then they've gone and been acquired and seen investment and growth. There are certain databases that we have access to where we can do comparisons with similar organizations, which just gives an idea of what potential trajectory might be like. Again, there are variants because you've got different buyers, they've got different things that they're looking at and different risk elements and what they're prepared to invest, but at least it gives you some sort of guide that you can look at there. But I mean, if you wanted to go into the questioning around this biomedical side and things in greater detail, I'm happy to talk about that separately with you if that's of interest.
Certainly, thank you, Simon. And another question which came in from Wei-Lu. What do you feel are the best ways to network with angel investors or venture capitalists? I would put a caveat on that question. For what purpose? If you just want to be amongst them, then it's a difficult way of actually getting to them. If you've got a product or a service that you wish angel investors or venture capitalists to invest in, then you really need to go through incubators, you need to go through the likes of the programs that Innovate UK run. You need to become, if you like, associated with leading angel networks like the UK Business Angels Association, that sort of thing, to be able to pitch your idea to groups of angels or investors. The marketplace is still who you know. I hate to say it, but it is, you go by reputation, and most angel investors work by word of mouth, and therefore it's getting it out there to the right people. Confidentiality, of course, always comes forefront. The Angels at Essex Equity Investment Platform is designed to eliminate, if you like, the word of mouth. The word of mouth is the Angels at Essex Equity Investment Platform. And if you've got a suitable project which requires investment funding, then we would be pleased to hear from you, Wei-Lu. So anything to add to that, Simon?
No, I mean, I think John's right. You know, it is a lot about making sure you put yourself in the right places to access the angel investors in a credible way. And just approaching an investor through networking and saying, I've got a great thing, doesn't have the same strength and credibility as going through the support programs like John's, like the Innovate UK and other ones that are there to help really craft the model that you've got and then do the submissions. Because in a way, angel investors or VC investors are looking to de-risk an investment as much as possible. And so knowing that you've had all of this comprehensive support and you've put together a really robust plan for them makes them feel much more confident in the investment. And where they're regularly tapped into those investment channels, they're going to be far more likely to go and invest in businesses that come through those channels than businesses that just approach them through a networking event, because the pre-qualification in a way has sort of been done for them.
I quite agree. And the fact that we work so closely with organizations like Simon's and many others, anybody who comes to any of the organizations that we work with, because we work together, our combined efforts can actually help a project or an idea actually get off the ground and actually maintain that level of credibility that angel investors or VC funds are looking for. And it goes without saying that it is who you know, but you've got to know the right people. And we know the right people. So by knowing us, you know the right people, and we can all help one another. So it's it's an open-ended question. How do I approach angels and VC? Well, you go through the doorways that are open to you at that time. And you never know where each door will lead. It is amazing where some of our projects have received their investment funding. It's all down to the way that angel investors actually source their clients. Yeah, so it goes without saying, Simon, as usual, I expected you to have an impact, and that's what it's all about. Making that impact is so important when you've got a project that you wish to develop and grow. You've got to make inroads into the marketplace, and others have got to be impacted by what you do. So I thank you, Simon, for assisting us today and for that excellent presentation. I will invite you back to do it again, so please don't say no. Thank you to Josh for managing the IT perfectly, as usual. I'm glad I didn't have my finger on the buttons. And so without any more from me, I'm now going to say thank you very much. Do have safe journeys if you have to make those journeys. Please be safe out there and take all necessary precautions. We do like to see you coming back on our webinars and to our events, and please keep an eye open for future events. We will be having live pitch events next month. So if you've got opportunities that you are seeking investment, now is the time to let us know, because we will be making up the lists of those people who we are putting forward for investment over the next coming weeks. We've got more webinars coming up every week now, right through to the end of March. So please don't miss out on any. They are all very, very important. Thank you so much for today. Thank you very much. Thank you, Simon. Thank you, Josh. Thank you to the audience, and farewell.